Hello and welcome to CaiKeys, and today I am absolutely honoured and incredibly privileged to be driving what is undoubtedly one of the cars of all time. You already know what this is. It's a Volkswagen Golf Mark V, and it has four wheels, an engine, and that's pretty much it. This is the car. If you think of a car and you open up the dictionary to find that definition, there will be a picture of this. It is the family hatchback. So how good is it? Is it a competent vehicle? Is it awful? Let's get it on the road and let's find out. So this is a very pedestrian Volkswagen Golf Mark V, and this has the 1.6 litre FSI engine. Now, that's not an engine that's known for particularly being very reliable. That's not an engine that's known for being particularly frugal. It has four cylinders, it's naturally aspirated and chain driven, and that's it for anything interesting with this engine. It's not. But a boring engine doesn't particularly mean that it's going to be a bad car. Look at the Nissan Micra, which I reviewed just the other day. That had a 1.6 litre engine, quite similar to this, chain driven, naturally aspirated, four cylinder, and it was an absolute hoot to drive. It's not just the engine, it's the suspension, it's the handling, it's the weight of the car that makes it. So this could surprise us. This could be a very fun vehicle indeed. But is it? The Volkswagen Golf is without a doubt an absolute institution. These things are equally at home in the McDonald's car park at weird, unsociable hours, or outside a garden centre at 9 o'clock in the morning. The Volkswagen Golf is an inevitability. Like death and taxes, you will at some point undoubtedly have an experience with the Volkswagen Golf. But unlike death and taxes, it's certainly not an unpleasant one. The Volkswagen Golf is, by all means, an incredibly competent vehicle. This Mark V Golf holds a special place in my heart because this exact car was actually my first car. I bought this to learn how to drive in, and truth be told, I didn't like it. And the reason I didn't like it, really, I think, is because I'd learnt to drive in a diesel car, which obviously has a fair bit more torque. And for some reason, I was always instructed to come off on the clutch on my gears and never put the accelerator down. So I constantly stalled this thing. I couldn't drive it to save my life. But now I've had a bit more practice and I've driven countless vehicles. It's really not a bad car to drive whatsoever, and it handles particularly nicely. One criticism that I always have of Volkswagen is that they never really try and innovate, and I think that's wrong because they do. Look at the Phaeton, for example. That was a car that had so many innovations. It's an absolute underrated and understated gem of a car. So Volkswagen do try new things. However, I think when they do it, they're the masters of being understated. The Mark V Golf might look like a totally normal car, and it is, but there's these few little Volkswagen quirks that they do, which are kind of pleasing. There's just this absolutely brilliant center console bottle opener that also doubles up as a cup holder. Of course, it's a bottle opener because Volkswagen absolutely love drink driving. Let's put that back. It's on a little ratchet mechanism too, so that you can accommodate for whatever size cup you've got. It's brilliant. The glove box is a pass-through for air, so if it's a summer day and you whack your AC on, chuck your cans in there. It'll keep it cool. It's a really good little idea. I just wish that Volkswagen would do a few more things like that. Think of when the Volkswagen New Beetle launched at the turn of the century. That was a really brilliantly styled car. I really appreciate when car manufacturers do something different, but look at the interior on it. It's just a Mark IV Golf. The thing is, I always think Volkswagen play it a little bit too safe, but I suppose that's what you get. You know what you're getting with a Volkswagen. And of course with the new Beetle, Volkswagen really did take one step into the unknown when they gave the owners a little plastic flower to put on their dashboard. Yeah, it's cool, it's a step in the right direction, but it's not enough. I want a little bit more from Volkswagen. But who am I to argue with one of the world's largest auto manufacturers? There's clearly a reason they style their cars like they do. Essentially, these cars are kind of timeless. What can I really say about the Golf Mark 5? Well, let's talk about the interior first off. I mean, we're sat in the thing, and what can I say? It is, like the rest of the car, an interior of all time. Perhaps I'm being a little bit too critical, because it's really not a bad place to sit. I have no real concerns with this. Adjustability in the steering wheel is absolutely brilliant, so you can fit in one of these if you're 3 foot tall or 7 foot. The battery's died. People's general perception of Volkswagen, to the non-car enthusiast, seems to be they're solid cars. I've talked to quite a few people who aren't particularly massive fans of vehicles, and they've always got positive things to say about Volkswagen. The name is synonymous with pretty decent build quality. There's always that, I wouldn't say myth, but that stereotype of German engineering. There's something quite premium about these cars, even though it is a commuter vehicle. It is Das Auto. It's still a nice vehicle. And I really think that stereotype holds true for the Volkswagen Golf Mark 5. I really think that it is a genuinely quite nice place to be. The interior plastics are pretty decent, they're soft touch and that. Not that that really matters, but all these things do contribute to just quite a nice cabin feel. It's really surprisingly well insulated in here from the outside world. And that's because Volkswagen use a fair bit of sound deadening material. It's just that little extra premium touch, which is nice to have. And although something like a Toyota Corolla is a brilliant car and an excellent competitor to this, you don't really tend to get much of that, which you do get in something like this. And as I was saying, it's a really nice thing to have. Things like the glove box being flocked is nice. The door cards are felt lined. It's a little bit of a double-edged sword, actually, but the wheel arch liners are lined with felt, not just plastic or just absent like they are in a few cars. And whilst I'm sure that has some kind of negligible impact to noise, vibration and harshness, unfortunately that holds water and then you get rotten wheel arches. But the fact is, this is, for the average person, a really decent place to be. And I can understand why they sold so many of these. We are currently driving up the rake for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why I decided to go this way, but this is an immensely steep hill. Oh my God, that's narrow. It's a 25% hill, a 25% gradient. My uncle, the absolute mad lad, somehow managed to cycle up this. I tried walking up this and it was absolutely horrible. But the Golf does it because it's got a really decent amount of low down torque for a naturally aspirated petrol engine. I'm quite surprised with it. You know, this is a steep hill and the car's not loaded, and obviously a car should not struggle, but I'm kind of lugging the engine a bit, keeping the revs low, and it's surprising. It's getting up the hill without really any concern. I can put my foot down and the revs do pick up. It's a very easy vehicle to drive. This car is now currently owned by my dad, and he uses it to get into work. He uses it as a commuter vehicle. He's not a car enthusiast. He does service his car when required, and he does treat it very well indeed, I must say. And I think that's really what you have to do with Volkswagens. People will say get a Corolla and you can potentially miss a service or run it outside of the expected interval, but general consensus on German cars seems to be that you must stick to those service guidelines. And to be honest, maintain your car, guys. I can't say that I do, because I can't remember the last time I changed the oil on my daily Rover 75, but do as I say and not as I do, please. Volkswagen seem to have, amongst the enthusiast community, a little bit of a mixed reputation. From what I've read on the internet, it seems to be more of an American thing, that people don't really tend to like these cars. I think in Europe, Volkswagens generally have a pretty solid reputation. But in America, general consensus seems to be that these things are unreliable, they'll break. Personally, anecdotally, this car's been really good. We've only had a few minor problems. For some reason, shortly after I first bought this car, the coolant expansion cap went missing. We don't know where it went. It just disappeared one day, so we had to get a new cap. I still can't explain what happened. I mustn't have tightened it properly and it must have fell off. And then as for other problems, not many. We've recently had an electrics problem in the boot. Essentially, when you open and close the boot, it puts a little bit of stress on the light cluster wires because they're too short. And then you end up getting rear light problems, rear wiper problems, I think door locking problems potentially. Easy fix. Take off the rubber boot, extend the wires, solder them back together, job's a good one. This car's been solid. It really has. It's been a really decent commuter vehicle. I'd love to tell you more about the reliability of these things, but I genuinely can't. And the 1.6 FSI is not an engine that's renowned for its reliability. Luckily, in the Mark V Golf, you can get the 1.9 and the 2-litre Volkswagen diesel engines, both of which are absolutely legendary. I'll leave it amongst yourselves in the comments for you to debate and argue about which engine's better. Personally, I like the 1.9, but the 2-litre is a hell of an engine. They're reliable, they're frugal. The 1.9, I know especially, you can get a fair bit of performance from it with a remap. Legendary. What can I say? They'll do moon miles. The 1.6, on the other hand, is it an engine I'd go for if I was to purchase one of these in the future? No, unfortunately. It's not a horrendous engine. Like I said, you've got a really decent amount of low down torque on this engine and it will pull fairly well. But the fuel economy is not great. I'm just looking on the infotainment, the cluster, and we seem to be getting 33 miles per gallon on average, and it's usable. I'm not sure if that's right because it just seems too low. This car typically actually spends most of its life on the motorway, to be fair, on the motorway and around town. It lives a fairly normal, sedate life, so I'm not entirely certain why the miles per gallon is 33. You'd be better off getting the diesel, taking that hit on VED, road tax, whatever it's called now, and just paying the difference because you'd make it back up in fuel. I say whatever it's called now, but we've not paid road tax since the 1930s and I wasn't alive then, so it's always been, I believe, VED under my life. Regarding kit in this car, it's not bad. This is the Volkswagen Golf Match, I believe, so you get a few little bits and pieces, and the base models of these really are base, but these things are so cheap and so plentiful now that you can get something with a decent spec. You've got cruise control. That's all you need. You've got decent climate control. I really like the double din stereos in these cars. They've got massive aftermarket support. You can upgrade a fair bit of them with newer Golf double din radios. They look nice and they're well positioned. I really think that Volkswagen, they hit it out the park when they were designing the infotainment system, and I realised that is a very boring thing to remark on, but this is CaiKeys. You don't get excitement, you just get me pushing a trolley round a car park. Oh God, I'm a 23-year-old man messing around with supermarket trolleys on my own in the middle of a multi-storey car park at 8 o'clock in the morning. What has my life become, man? Good God. The Golf lifestyle is wearing off on me, I can tell. I was going to use these B&M trolleys, but they lock them together because they don't trust the patrons of B&M not to nick the trolleys. So I had to use a Marks and Spencer's. Let's put these back. Let's be nice. We're driving up into the countryside now, where I did the review on the Nissan Micra K12 C+C just the other week, and this car is not as fun. I believe this has got less power. I'll verify this. I'll post the horsepower somewhere on the screen. Basically, compared to the Nissan Micra's 110 thereabouts horsepower, this thing, you can't feel it as well. It's not geared for fun. It's far more refined. You feel more closeted and it feels slower, but I'm comparing apples to oranges. And inevitably I'm going to do that because at this moment in time I only have these two cars up on the channel. So until I get a few more, I'm going to be making some slightly bizarre comparisons. But it's perhaps not as bizarre as you'd think. You know, both the cars have 1.6 litre engines. They're 4 cylinders, naturally aspirated, with roughly 100 brake horsepower. So you'd think they drive moderately similar. If you're looking for fun, this is not the car for you, essentially. At least not in the 1.6 FSI. The Micra is the more fun car. As a daily driver, which is better? Well, this, really. This is the better daily driver. Is it the better car? No, it's not. I prefer the Micra. But this is coming from an enthusiast perspective. Why is that woman in school uniform? It's a Saturday and she's about 45. Driving up into Affetside, and as I recently discovered, this is an old Roman road which leads to Manchester, courtesy of the phenomenal Decades History channel on YouTube. I have learned an incredible amount from that channel. Like and subscribe. There really isn't too much to say about this car, and that's why I've made this video a little bit silly, because this is just an overwhelmingly competent, albeit boring vehicle, and that's really not a bad thing. As far as enthusiasts are concerned, a little bit of a boring vehicle, okay, fine, we like something a bit exciting, but if you're looking for a reliable commuter that'll get you to work and back, you don't really crave excitement. You've got a nice 6-speed, you've got cruise control, you've got all the comfort you'll ever need. I forgot to add, actually, if you have one of those old style fat iPods with the hard drive and the 30-pin connectors, this is the car for you, because in the glove box you've got an iPod docking station, which, okay, it's a product of its time, but a lot of people still use those things. It might come in handy, and that basically bypasses the CD changer. So you turn the engine on you turn the infotainment on, press CD, and then it connects to your iPod. See, even when we pick the revs up, it's still a fairly closeted, refined vehicle. Suspension-wise, it's great. You've got these 15-inch tyres that just soak up all the bumps. It's very comfortable. You don't need big rims. That's something that annoys me. Let's have massive, thick sidewalls so we don't feel all the bumps. No one cares what your wheels look like. Ride on 15s. Oh yeah, one thing that really annoys me, actually I was saying about the stereo, it's probably my biggest issue with this car. I really hate it, and it's a deal breaker. The volume button on the bloody double din head unit does not remain static when I change the volume. That means that if I try and increase or decrease the volume without using the buttons on the steering wheel, then the volume button will not be upright, and that really does my head in. It can't have been hard to either remove that volume button or to install just so the dial would rotate and the face would remain central. That would have been much better. I think you can actually buy aftermarket stickers because this is an issue that lots of people have. It's like, it's one of those things that are just not a problem, but once you notice it, it's really genuinely frustrating. If you've ever owned one of these, you'll know what I'm on about. And if you do own one of these and you haven't noticed that, notice it. Another feature which I absolutely love on this vehicle, and I'll show you once we pull up, is the incredibly optimistic speed limiter. So the speedometer, that's very bloody optimistic. It goes to 160 miles per hour. But admittedly, I think they might use the same instrument cluster with the Volkswagen Golf R32, which, you know, that'll probably do about 150 or so. That's a fast car. This one goes to 160. Let me show you if I can get it bloody working. Let's take this out. Right, okay, so 33 miles per gallon and that. Oh, 34 point, that's speed warning. There we go, speed warning. So basically, the speed warning is a really nice function, to be fair, especially if you've got like a black box or something. Basically, once you bypass a certain speed, the car will go ding, so you know that you've exceeded that speed. Really nice. The great thing is just how ridiculously optimistic it is. Okay, so you never really need it more than 75 or 80 miles per hour in this country. It'll ding if you go over the speed limit. Nice to have. All right, 100, sensible. 110. Not entirely sure the car can go a lot faster than that. Oh, 115. 120. You're never going to be doing more than 130 in one of these. 150. 160 miles per hour speed warning. I mean, this is the little car that thinks it can. What can I say? So everyone, there you have it, the Volkswagen Golf Mark V. And what a car! Seriously, what a daily driver. I do realise that I've kind of neglected discussing the performance of this vehicle, and that's for good reason. This is not a performance car. It's not made to fulfill that role, especially in 1.6 FSI spec. I mean, what you've got here is a really very sensible daily driver. There's really a genuinely good car. I mean, it's proportioned well, it's a good size, there's loads of room in there, and most importantly, it's really comfortable, and when these are serviced, they can prove to be reliable motors, as this one has been. If you're looking for a sensible car, really, I've no qualms with the Golf Mark V. It's excellent. Just make sure that if you're looking for one, you get one that's been well serviced with history, and check the rear sills because they do tend to fail. But if you can get one in decent nick, absolutely, man, go for it. They're well equipped, they're comfortable, excellent cars. So I really hope that you've enjoyed watching this video, and let me know what you think of the Golf Mark V in the comments down below. And most importantly, don't forget your CaiKeys. Thank you. There we go.